22nd of October. We've got quite a full room in the Guildhall today, with colleagues from a number of the services to address a couple of the reports at the first part of the agenda. So can I welcome everyone? It may be just nice to introduce yourself. If I start at the end on the left, please.
Peter Bynan, Community Partnerships and Destination Development Coordinator.
Sue Reid, Community Partnerships and Destination Development Manager.
Afternoon, Tracy McNulty, Head of Cultural Services, Parks and Cleansing.
Hello, Sarah Lackenby. I'm Head of Digital and Customer Services.
Hi, Ness Young, Director of Corporate Services. Hi.
Councillor Paxton Hogg-Williams, member for Fairwood.
David Robertsley, member on the committee.
So, Chair Paula O'Connor.
Hello, I'm Adrian Jeremiah, a solicitor employed by the council.
Jeremy Parkhouse, Democratic Services.
Chris Williams, Head of Commercial Services.
Karen Morgan, Head of Housing and Public Health.
Hi, I'm Tom Price. I'm the Divisional EHO in Pollution, Private Sector Housing and Building Control.
And Adrian Johnson, I'm the Team Leader for Pollution Control and Public Health and Pest Control.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the meeting. Don't be too daunted. It's quite a...
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry,
Chair,
there's someone online. Sorry, I forgot the... Sorry, Leslie.
But also, I've got a point to raise. I appreciate that we were agreed the items for the agenda at the last meeting, but seriously, I've got real concerns how we can do an agenda of this length and do it justice. I really would recommend, if at all possible, that some items are deferred.
If I could suggest that we'll see how we work our way through by half of the agenda, particularly if we can deal with section A, because section B are reports for information. So if you can just give me give me a chance, Leslie, to see how we get on come the end of section A, and then perhaps we'll ask for a decision to be made, if that's okay.
Yeah, okay, we'll see how it goes. Anyway, I'm Councillor Leslie Walton.
And the next one, Jeff?
Yes, sorry, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Jeff Jones, Carey and Dunvant.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm Councillor Mike White, but also, Chair, I would like to endorse the concerns of my colleague, Councillor Walton, because these one of these reports have obviously been before us prior, and we need to see if things are being followed up correctly, what we done from the last time that we had the officers with us as well. But as I say, if we're going to sort of dig deep and to see that we have got sort of follow-ups on recommendations, we obviously need that information, and obviously this is going to take time. And I totally endorse what Councillor Walton is saying, that we really got to, if we're going to do the areas that we're looking at justice, we've got to give considerable time that we can do it as members and lay members.
Okay, appreciate those comments, and we'll consider that as we move forward. Michael Locke.
Hello, I'm Councillor Michael Locke and I represent Sketty Ward. Thank you.
Peter? Peter?
Yeah, sorry, Chair.
Councillor Peter Black.
Yeah, sorry. I haven't raised my hand.
Okay. No, I'm just asking for introductions, Peter.
Oh, right, sorry, yeah, Councillor Peter Black, Chair of Scrutiny Programme Committee.
Okay. Ness? Yeah, you're okay? Who else has not spoken? Simon?
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, Simon Corkins, Chief Internal Auditor. Afternoon, everybody.
And Nick? Nick Davis? You're on mute, Nick.
Yeah, hi guys, Nick Davis. I'm the Principal Auditor.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, if we can take apologies for absence, please.
Sorry, Chair, I haven't introduced myself.
Oh, sorry, Julie.
It's okay. It's a big list, I know. Julie Davis, lay member.
Anybody else I've missed? No? Okay. Apologies for absence, please.
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Can I have any disclosures of interest, please? No disclosures? No. If we can go through the minutes of the meeting of the 3rd of September, then please, page by page for accuracy, before we ask for approval. Page 1, page 2, page 3.
Yes, please, Chair. There's a small typo error on the first paragraph. I think it's the sort is misspelt. It's spelt S-O-R-T and it should be S-O-U-G-H-T.
What paragraph is that, Julie?
First paragraph.
On page 3, is there?
Yeah.
Hey, Jeremy. Page 4. Page 5.
Oh, yes, Chair. Sorry to pipe up again. I asked a question on developing proactive procurement work, which Jonathan of the fraud team agreed to get back on to the committee. It's not featured in this, so perhaps I can send my question to Jeremy for him to add it.
Okay.
It also doesn't appear in the actions.
Okay, thank you, Julie. We can ensure that's added in and appropriate action in the action plan. Page 6. Page 7.
Yes, sorry, Chair, me again. Fourth paragraph, I just want to check, Kelly Gillings is an Audit Wales employee, so could I check that it's correct to refer to her as an officer?
Chair.
Yeah.
Kelly Gillings is employed by the Regional Partnership Board. She's not.
Oh.
She's not an auditor.
Oh,
She's not
sorry, but
okay.
Okay, so she would be classed as an officer.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, thank you. My apologies.
Thank you. So that's 7 and the final page 8. So aside from those comments that Julie's raised, are we happy to approve those minutes? Paxton, I got hands around the room, hands on screen as well. Okay, Jeremy?
Yeah.
Okay. If we can now go to part A of the reports and taking into account the comments made by Councillor Leslie Walton and Councillor Mike White, we'll see how we progress through to in part A, and then we'll discuss whether we pursue the remainder of the agenda or what action we need to take. So if we can take the Pest and Animal Control report. This is the report that we heard at the last meeting was a moderate assurance report. It hadn't gone to Cabinet, it's since gone to Cabinet, and it's now come back complete with the actions and also representation from officers involved in this subject area. So if I can welcome colleagues from the right of me to take us through this. Assume that we've read the paper, but if you can give us assurance what action you've been taking.
Thank you, Chair. So very quickly then, as an overview of it, previous audit 2020 to 21, we had a substantial assurance. So it's the first time that we've been in this position. As it says there, 1 high risk and 8 medium identified. If you obviously not to go through the report, considerations of time here. Key high risk was about the home to work use of vehicles, which was a COVID, first came into sort of use during the coronavirus pandemic, where we needed to keep the lads out and about doing the visits safely. So home to work was given as a concession so that we could keep the show on the road, really. Then as the pandemic sort of progressed and we entered into that recovery phase, as it were, in 22 into 23, effectively, given the high level of service demand we're experiencing with pest control, it was one that wasn't rescinded and has now been actioned, and that action is now complete. It's all been submitted in. Officers have, we've been through the relevant calculations with all the staff, and if I correctly, they've all signed up, and that's all been submitted, and that action is now signed off and completed. When we look through then on the medium risks there that have been identified, again, actions to date now are complete, with the final sign-offs coming on our inventory. We had issues which were linked to sort of invoices and journalings, for example. If we look at some of those areas, due to staff resource issues with the Public Health Support Hub, which was down to an officer on long-term sick leave, and then also a member of staff leaving, we were hit with 2 members down. So we were prioritising resources and backlogs were created. We're now back up to full staffing complement, and training has been carried out. And so we are catching back up, if not almost completely back up to date. And we sort of worked from current processes and then clearing the backlog as well to work the two together. And we're now back on track. So again, another action that's been completed. And within the remainder, really, of the medium risks within them, all the other checks are being done. We've updated the P card limit one, for example. We've put an increase in the officers' limits there, and the inventories are in for the vehicle checks, etc. And we've got a new kennelling contract in place with a new provider due to the other one retiring, which led into some of the issues we faced in that final year. So we're all compliant with the new procurement regulations as well for that one. So that's another action that's been signed off and completed. I can carry on with it, but I'm conscious that if everyone's read it, if you want to go straight to questions or any thoughts or concerns you may have.
That's fine. What I've heard is that you've taken immediate action and things are starting to get on a trajectory of improvement.
All those 9 sort of 1 high and the 8 medium, they've all been actioned and are completed.
Okay. And in that case, then we'll open up to questions. Any questions online first, please? Any questions from officers or members online? Julie?
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask you whether prepayment for certain services has been considered? For example, the public are used to doing that for bulky waste collections. Is that something that you could possibly take forward for the service? And could I ask why contracts are let annually and not for a longer period, please?
Thank you. So answering the first part of the question, there are chargeable and non-chargeable elements to the pest control and the animal warden service. So when we look at the pest side, barring rats, we charge for everything, and it's a payment required up front on booking. Rats are a free treatment within Swansea, so obviously there isn't a payment required. With the dogs, when we look at our figures, sadly, we rehome through charity more often than not. 2/3 to 3/4 of the animals that we impound, we seize. Those that have been abandoned or lost on the street. We then, when we return animals to owners, we collect that money at point of arrangement. When they come through to us, we obviously take that payment or the compensation for us, in a sense, of remuneration for looking after the animal prior to returning. If we rehome a dog for sale, as it were, to a member of the public, once we've done the vetting, that's taken at prior to collection as well. So we do that element up front. And the second part of the question, sorry, can you just quickly remind me? The second part was on contracts.
Why are they let annually and not for longer?
A lot of the businesses we work with prefer to work on an annual basis. So we have a mixture of in-house sort of council contracts that we operate, say the baling plant, for example, and then some of the private contracts we run at the moment. Those companies prefer a 1-year option. It is something that we'll work with. But from our perspective, with the bait increases and the costs that are increasing now, 1 year actually sometimes is quite helpful for us to be able to give a reasonable and accurate price and a competitive price for the works we're providing. But it is something that we can discuss.
Okay, thank you. And could I also ask you for an update on the GDPR and data retention training and what arrangements there are for staff without access to online learning, because there could be wider implications for communications if there's no online access?
So the officers themselves don't have day-to-day access to a laptop, as it were, but they do have the phones. So we are currently looking at how we can deliver maybe an in-person sense for that, but we'll be pulling the officers back in on part of their afternoon sessions. We'll minimise calls, get them in so that they can carry out training online. That's part and parcel of their mandatory training.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Mike White.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, in regards to the review of the records regarding the stray dogs, you say obviously this was the previous recommendation about there being put onto the stray dog book. How often is that book checked? Is it weekly or is it monthly? So that you can keep your records accurate. I know obviously you say obviously about the chipping process, and you know you can't force an owner to have the dog chips. But is there anything that perhaps could be looked at, perhaps with some sort of legislation being sort of applied for as a local authority? You know, if other authorities are having, perhaps, well, probably are having the same sort of problems as well.
So the dog book, the register, it is accessed daily. It's used to be a paper copy back, I reference COVID again, but we went on to an electronic version through Teams. We had a few issues with some of the data entries on that, which we worked on and corrected. But that dog book is accessed daily. So it's minimal information that goes onto it to ensure that the register is up to date, and then the sort of the content of each record is contained within our FLAIR database, our record management system. When we look at microchipping, yes, there are regulations in place, but the issue we tend to have is if we pick up a stray and we don't know where it's come from, who's was in possession of the animal, if the chip isn't registered, we're at a majoritively we no other action. We haven't got somebody that we can tackle, somebody that we can take to task. If the chips are out of date, then we send the reminder letters. We require that the chip update is carried out, and there are regulations there for us to enforce if required. What we have been doing previously is that where we have an unchipped animal, where it's not returned to the owner, which is more often than not the case, we have been chipping that animal prior to it being released to charity. So we are then starting that chip record. And that's the sort of process we follow. Unfortunately, a lot of dogs that we pick up are still only chipped to breeder. And that breeder may be several years ago and it doesn't have the record. So it's a fall down in the regulation. If we sell an animal, we ensure that chip details are updated to the new owner so that those records are in place. And the majority of animal owners are fine. They're not the problem. It's the ones that are getting abandoned, unfortunately. And we're seeing an increase in the sort of the percentage of abandoned animals due to age, cost of veterinary bills, etc. And that's a burden that obviously the council is having to take on.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
David.
Thanks for the report. I just got a couple of things. One was a more functional one and one was more technical. In regard to, you mentioned then about the stray animals, historically and what's happening, is the stray animal or stray dog situation getting worse, or is it actually getting better with chipping, or what's the trend, I should say, over the last period?
What we found was sort of in the looking at the last 5-year stats that we've got online, we've always been sort of many years we've been sort of averaging around the 250 to 280 sort of strays that we're dealing with a year. Then when we entered into the pandemic and people working from home, sort of social media, for example, Facebook has seen a decline in the number of strays that we've had to sort of intervene with, because people are putting messages out, they're searching lost dog, and they're reuniting through those mechanisms. So we saw a reduction through COVID. You know, in 2020, 21, we had 104 strays we dealt with. We're almost a third of what we normally deal with. We have climbed back up to our usual records. The last couple of years, especially with the increase, the cost of living, cost of veterinary bills, we are seeing more animals that are requiring veterinary care that are being abandoned, where we can't track the owner. And that's a cost that's being borne by the authority. The vet we currently use has a no euthanasia policy unless it's a last resort. And that is predominantly on welfare, health of the animal, or aggressive nature, etc. So we are incurring the vet bills there. If we can get the animal to a point where it's well to travel, a lot of the charities then will take that animal for us, and we release that animal to the charity at no cost. and that it's with then the responsibility of the charity, and then they look for the rehoming. And Adrian and the team have built some nice links with certain. We've got a specific German Shepherd rescue, for example. We have an individual we use down West Wales, for example, who's a good conduit on rehoming for us. So we rehome probably 2/3 of our animals through charity.
Thanks for that. And you've touched upon something else about partnership working, which obviously you mentioned then. But I just wanted to ask in regard to what you've just mentioned, do you actually put out public information about this situation and
historically
responsibility of dog owners?
There's information on the website for us, but with regard to sort of publicly putting out the animals that we may have, historically we haven't done that because we've always had a concern, and we've had instances many years ago around basically people trying to trick us, trying to con us, and claiming a dog's theirs when it's not. And we have a concern over welfare issues there. So we have several charities over the years we've used. We've built up very good relationships who we know are good, competent bodies, good standards, etc. And that animal is going on for its forever home in that sense. And that's the primary route we take. We have the systems in place. If somebody's lost their dog, they can contact us, and that dialogue begins immediately over the phone, for example, on reuniting. But we don't advertise the animals we have because there might be unscrupulous means around.
Thanks for that. The last one was really more on Appendix A. You've got in 2.6.3c, in the agreed action column, it sounds a bit contradictory. If I read it out, say the council does not have a duty to record the dog owner's details, there is a duty of dog owners to have their dogs chipped. The chip holds the owner's information, and the council does keep the chip details. It just sounds a bit contradictory about holding.
Adrian will correct me if I've misread this as well. What we're looking at is we don't necessarily record the personal information of that individual because that information is held by the chip, and that chip is held on a secure database system. So other chip providers are there, but Petlog, for example, one we use, which is quite a big company in the UK, we have an authenticated secure login. We can search that chip data, and they hold the database. So we don't necessarily, we're not bound to record the personal data, and it's part and parcel of that GDPR issue when we're looking at what we hold and how long and retention, etc. It is securely held in a third-party server. And I think that's the point that was, I think, looking to be made there.
Yeah, probably what I'd add to this is this trend we're seeing is across the country. So it's not just Swansea, is the numbers on stray dogs is sky high at the moment, and every local authority I speak to are experiencing exactly the same problems. It's the numbers of dogs coming in, it's having the ability to hold those dogs, and that's real difficulty, and then rehoming those dogs is becoming increasingly difficult. So we are managing, we're actually in a slightly better position than some authorities, but it is becoming more and more difficult.
Well, thanks very much for that. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Peter Black.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of the committee, but I think I need to record that I am chair of RSPCA Cleasnini as an interest, seeing as I am present.
Okay, thank you, Peter. If there are no more, Gordon.
Sure, driving us. An annual check. But is there a requirement for drivers to notify you if they begin to accrue points?
Yeah, it's within the driver's handbook for the council. So yeah, we do the annual, you can get the code sent to us, we give you the license, but yes, it's part and parcel of the council's driver's handbook that the officers sign up to.
Yeah.
And the one thing I'd note on that is obviously that was identified in the audit, but we'd picked it up beforehand, and we'd put those measures in place prior to the audit.
There are no further questions. I'm not seeing any hands up in the room or on screen. Can I thank officers for coming along today? And it is pleasing to see that you've taken the action that you've taken, and you're managing the increasing trend with the stray animals. It must be quite a challenging time for you all, but we recognise the work that's been done. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We can move quickly on then to the destination lettings report. And again, we've got colleagues coming to present this report. I'm not quite sure who's going to introduce it. Is it you?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so a very quick introduction from myself, as Head of Service. So the report that has come before you, it does highlight that a moderate report did come before you previously, just reflecting on Councillor White's comment. Just to clarify, the current report does not refer to that recommendation previously. That's resolved. This report is concerned with quite complex issues around licensing and the different arrangements in terms of financial recovery, the terms, named persons. It identifies a series of recommendations which Sue will take you through, all of which have been agreed with and are either complete, as in, you know, been put into action, or are in traction of being done so for next month for full implementation by the end of this current term, this financial year. So that's sufficient introduction for myself. I'll hand over, sorry, to the service manager who can walk you through some of the finer details in terms of the recommendations, findings and response. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Yes, the actual one of the risks obviously was in respect of the licence, and I think it was only last year we actually put the licence online in all good faith and trying to sort of from a resource point of view. But during the audit, it was highlighted that actually by the caravan, the licence holders actually just ticking the box to say they received it. It couldn't possibly be enforceable. So what we've been looking at, and actually we've got a bit of a further update from that point 7 there, the recommendation 214. We were looking to sort of look at actually returning the paper licence going forward, and Peter's had quite a number of meetings now with legal, so we have had some extra resource offered to us from legal to actually return to the paper licence. So that's our further update really. We have started drafting the new licence based on some of the legal recommendations in regard to that, so we've actually moved on slightly, although we have saying the review will be done by the end of this year. It will take some time to roll it out, and obviously we'll have to meet with some of the caravan holders as well. So, but it's moved slightly on from there. And that was the only high one. The others then, the recommendations with regards to the licensee and the actual waiting list. Yes, we have got quite a long waiting list. And again, within the licence, we are looking to return to a rather than multiple names, because there's 3 names on the licence, and majority of our families, obviously, there would never be an opportunity for that plot to leave that family in a sense. So we are looking again within this new licence to go to just the one licence holder, which will mean that plot will come back in at some point, and we'll be able to look then at the waiting list. So that's another recommendation that we've carried forward, and we're actually looking to put it into the licence terms, and therefore those allocation procedures will change quite dramatically really in that respect. So again, although we've said sort of to implement that by next year, we're actually hoping to be able to roll out that new licence and those procedures to the caravan plot holders prior to that as well, to have that discussion. And then again, with regards to regular monitoring of unpaid invoices and prompt action to recover outstanding payments, this again has been addressed with very close liaison from the team with finance. The actual payment structure has been in place for a number of years, and I think we mentioned it previously with regards to direct debits, that the plot holders actually get offered either direct debit or to be able to pay within that year really. So they're given a 12-month. So again, within the licence and conversations we've had with legal, again, it's going to be either an upfront payment or direct debits going forward. So again, we are dramatically changing the way things have been for the last how many years. So it's a big change for plot holders, but we're trying to bring it in line maybe with other commercial caravan sites, if you like. Although we are a council, we are trying to bring that in line with us. So there's going to be some dramatic changes over the course of the next 3 to 4 months in respect of that. And again, I think one of the things that was brought up was with regard, and when the audit was taking place, it appeared that somebody on the waiting list, jumped the waiting list, but actually they may have been on the waiting list for themselves to have a plot, but they were actually a family member named on a licence, although it may appear during the audit that they jumped the waiting list. They didn't, because they were actually on the waiting list, but they were actually a family member on a licence. So when that when the previous family member passed away, they automatically took on that licence. And obviously they're looking for their own plot. So again, the new system, the new licence that will be put in place will address all of those issues really, because there'll only be the one person. And after that, that plot comes back to us then to look at the waiting list. Unless there's anything that you'd like me to go into any other greater detail.
That's really encouraging to hear, because, you know, in a pre-meeting, we couldn't understand why those arrangements weren't already in place. So it's really encouraging. So I'm sure some of the questions we had to ask, you know, may not be asked now. So I'm grateful for you going through it in that level of detail. So if I can open up to questions, Councillor Mike White.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, in regards to an applicant applying for a licence, obviously it says in 2 and 3 about the licensee no longer wishes to retain the plot. Is there anything stipulated within that agreement that a period of X amount of days or weeks they got to inform the local authority so they would know that then that a new plot was going to be made available? Hello?
Sorry. We're just trying to reconsider the response for you, Mike.
Yeah, sorry, councillor, I didn't have my mic on. I was taking the liberty of clarifying my understanding of your question, which maybe if I do this out loud, you can confirm. My understanding, your question is that should somebody not be able to either continue holding the licence or decide they want to pass it on or whatever, that is there an agreed time frame in that agreement with that licensee within which they have to advise the local authority? Is that your question?
Yes, Tracy, yes, more or less it, yeah.
Thank you.
So in response, no, there currently isn't a time period. The only time period that we're required to ask is because if you no longer want the plot, you have to remove your caravan, because obviously the local authority don't own any of the caravans. So you've got to be realistic and give people a time period whereby they can arrange for caravans to be removed. But in response to your answer, no, there's not. It's normally someone ringing you or messaging you, explaining the situation, why they don't want to keep on the plot. What most tend to do is they tend to do it at the end of the sort of the season or the end of the financial year, because they paid up front for their fees. And when the caravan park is closed in January and February, that's when most people tend to leave the site and remove their caravan if it needs to be removed.
Okay, it was just a thought that people would have some idea about giving the actual notification.
Yeah, I take that on board, and that could definitely be thought about, because the greater period we have of knowing if someone's going to leave the site, then the better chance we have of someone coming on and it being a much easier transition. So that could definitely be something we could think about putting in the new agreement, about that there is a period of time, a period of notice that needs to be given.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, I obviously raised that because you say that you obviously got a waiting list.
Yeah, there's an extensive waiting list. There's a lot of demand for the site. So yeah, take that on board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, all very, very good recommendations, actually, especially the perhaps a single name actually on the licence. But with regards to the recommendation, with regard to the outstanding payments, I think it was number 10. They got 12 months to pay. So somebody really could live there for 12 months, not pay anything, and then, okay, I assume they're actually evicted. Why don't you actually, you know, introduce really that it's got to be an upfront payment? I think it's a little bit, I've never heard of anybody having 12 months to actually pay anything before.
Yeah, and that's taken on board. So the caravan park can only be, you can only stay on site for 10 months of the year. There's 2 months where the park's closed, the barrier's closed, the water's turned off. So people can't stay on site for 12 months of the year. However, as per the review, that we are historically we found ourselves in a situation where people haven't paid, and then you issue an eviction notice, so to speak, and they pay on the 12th hour. So taking all this into account, this is why we're looking at a total review where fees have to be paid up front before the season begins.
Good.
Sue, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, I wanted to come back in on the previous comment, but it relates to this one as well. I was going to say in relation to a notice period that the changes that are being put in place to the payment terms will have a significant impact on that. So taking a payment up front and or monthly debit very quickly reveals when somebody has no intention on being present. So that will accelerate that process. And just to offer reassurance to yourself, Councillor, your suggestion there is indeed what is being put in place as a result of, you know, a bit of a review, a long overdue review, acknowledged. I think in the face of, you know, a very broad changes to cultural services over the years, it has been on the waiting list, and we are, you know, we're very grateful to have had it brought right to the fore, because it's meant we get extra support from our colleagues to resolve these issues.
Good.
Thank you, Sue. David.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the report. And as Chair mentioned, you've answered quite a few of the questions that were coming your way. So obviously you've been spared. But just in regard to 2.1.3 in the end column, it talks about an initial review by next month, and then the final changes by March 2026. Are we looking at implementing all the changes about licensing and paying and everything from April 2026? Is that the way I read it? Thank you.
Yes, that's correct. And we've actually been able to, because we did have that support, as Tracy mentioned, from legal colleagues up front and straight away. Like I say, Peter's had that opportunity to meet with them a couple of times now. We are actually at a draft of a licence already, which is out for consultation with ourselves, and then we will be taking it to the caravan plot holders. So we're actually a little bit ahead of that. So yes, with a view to putting those in place for the next financial year.
Thank you. Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question for Simon of Internal Audit, please.
Yes, Julie. Hi.
Hi. If I take you to report reference 216, which we've been discussing in some detail, the recommendation doesn't appear to have done any root cause analysis, because the solution that's been proposed, and I welcome it, in terms of having payment up front, the recommendation just says regular monitoring of unpaid invoices. So can root cause analysis be incorporated into auditors training going forward, please?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. As part of the suite of training modules we've rolled out recently, root cause analysis is one of those that we've recently trained our auditors on. So it is on the radar, Julie. That is being built into the audit programme going forward. This is a fairly old audit programme, has been updated since this audit. So yeah, we are taking that on board, Julie.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, if there are no other questions, then we've got a number of reports on the agenda today. So if I can thank officers for attending today, and really pleased to see all the actions that have been taken, and we won't be in the same position from April of next year. Thank you so much. So if we can move on to the information and management controls around the council's procurement and purchasing. I welcome another officer from the council to
yeah, so Chris Williams, Head of Commercial Services. So this report follows on from the committee's previous request for information on this matter. Yeah, and to look at the management controls related to procurement and purchasing, and previous discussions around various audits which had led to that point. So the papers provided set out an overview of the procurement controls and then take a sort of step beyond that to look at the purchasing controls. So in paragraph 3 of the main report, I'm saying that the procurement controls cover the process of identifying a supplier and putting in place an agreed contract. And then the purchasing and then allows payment against that contract. So to split the two elements of this that way. And then in paragraph 4, I'm saying that, well, this is a high level overview, and there's a lot more detail, of course, in the council constitution. And that is linked, I had a look this morning, Article 14, which in turn links to Part 4, 4.5, the contract procedure rules. And I know a number of the councillors on this committee, Councillor White, Councillor Jones, have worked with in putting those rules in place. There was a councillor working group that fed to the constitutional working group, which I think you know better than me, includes the leaders of all the political parties. And then that ultimately goes to full council. So a full review and political endorsement of that. And the point of that makes those controls mandatory in the operating governance of the council. Yes, I didn't replicate that in its entirety because I think that document can be accessed through that route. It's also important to note that whilst we have these internal rules, there are a number of layers above us. And I think we've discussed before something called the UK Procurement Act, which was brought in 23, but actually enacted this year. There's also other Welsh government laws as well we have to operate within. There's a Welsh Government Transparency Act related to procurement. There's the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. There's various health and safety acts. So what these rules are designed to do is to help us get best use of funds while also meeting the various legal and governance requirements in that sort of process consideration of how funds are spent. So if I move on, then looking at the procurement controls, I've given an overview of those. In paragraph 8, I note the interlink again with the various pieces of legislation, but the is that me? My computer, sorry. The system not only links to the laws of the UK government, but also we are bound into that through the documentation sets we get and also the training we get from the UK government. So the entire sort of procurement area has just gone through a UK government programme that they titled Transforming Public Procurement, but was designed to bring us up to date with the latest laws. So there's that. Paragraph 9 then takes us to the sort of first point of the, taking one of these contract procedure rules, is that there is a review of any spend above £10,000. That is a mandatory review. It is backed up by Simon and his audit team to make sure that this has happened, who will audit the council's contracting arrangements against that benchmark. And as you will know, you will have seen there are rolling departmental audits which happen to check compliance. So in my mind, it's very much a gated process. There are a number of steps within it which ensure good governance of public spend. That's the intent in the contract procedure rules. So even after that first step, upon approval to proceed, we will work with the service area to develop an appropriate procurement pack issued to suppliers, which they will of course then respond against. And I know from previous discussions with councillors, items of interest include we will check a supplier's certifications. We would not want to deal with a supplier, for example, drilling a hole in a primary school to assess electrical infrastructure who did not have the correct accreditations. That's built into that supplier review process. So it's quite a set of documents which are reviewed to check these matters. We will also review matters such as mandatory disclosures relating to modern slavery convictions, health and safety disclosures, the necessary insurances, which are critical, as you can imagine, professional indemnity, public liability. We will check method statement responses, which I'm sure you're aware of. So this is not just to say someone can do a job, it's then how will they do a job, taking into account, because the public sector environment is quite different often, well, certainly massively different than a residential environment. Again, using the school as an example, you might have children on site, and we will then move into safeguarding issues as well as health and safety issues. So you can imagine the layers of planning that go into creating these document sets. And as it put at the end of paragraph 10, as you're aware, the council contracts for an extremely diverse range of goods, service and works. And just think of everything from highways to waste to IT, colleague Sarah here, to technical experts. It's a very, very broad range. We use, in paragraph 11, I'm referring to the Welsh Government infrastructure. You'll know Sell to Wales. You may not know eTender Wales. It's an associated website. But we're going back to that interlink between the UK and Welsh governments. There are all sorts of systems here that we all share and ensure that sort of process control and good governance. I mentioned there's a new one just been introduced there at the bottom of the point 11, the new central digital platform, and that's to publish lots more information about who we're dealing with, basically in terms of tenders. Paragraph 12, I start to show the type of sign-off that's required. The example there is for a contract valued £140,000 plus, and you can see the level of review that is put into making sure that these commercial arrangements are appropriate. And of note, the committee has discussed previously, there is also review that the contract is signed and sealed in accordance with that governance requirements. Once the contract has gone through all that process, it is then formally lodged in our contract register, which again, Simon and his team will use as the benchmark in audit to check when they conduct the departmental audits. Is that spend marrying back to the central register? Has it gone through the various steps of decision making and governance? So that is the sort of procurement introduction. And then there is a second paper in the document set, which is labeled Appendix 1, which moves on to how we spend against a contract. Now, I was going to be joined today by a colleague, but unfortunately, he couldn't make it due to personal issues. So just note, this isn't my department that I'll be talking about, but I've been asked to speak on behalf of colleagues in the Service Centre, actually, who cover this area. I thought it was of interest because I think this is the sort of detail you were after, Chair, about how spend is then placed. What's the system? And it very much marries our internal fusion system, IT system, with decision makers, because you need a sort of an audit trail, you need automation in this system. You need a system that then maps those decisions back to effectively our bank account to make sure the money's there and people can track that spend through the general ledger. So that's a sort of brief idea where we're going here as to how we actually spend money against contracts. And we talk about this purchase to pay system. So it's designed that by the time that supplier invoices us, all necessary compliance checks and approvals have already been completed. And I talk about the integration there, second paragraph, integrates purchasing, accounts payable, general ledger, and ensures that sort of end-to-end system, which is robust, efficient, provides oversight and compliance through the cycle. Then in section 3, it's in appendix 1, we talk about the various elements of that. I won't go into all of them, but the sort of to pick a couple there. The second point, purchase requisitions. So this is where the officer involved wants to spend money, the point at which it gets real. Officers are delegated the spending limits by their head of service. So there's a sort of hierarchy of who can spend what and how that decision making is made. That then is backed up by a secondary responsibility of a buyer role. So these are two distinct roles, and the buyer will be then checking that that spend is against an appropriate contract arrangement. So the things I discussed, the machine I discussed in the first part of this, about how something gets onto the contract register, that buyer's role is to make sure those two things marry up and money isn't going out the door that didn't correspond to an official agreement effectively. And again, thinking about this from an audit perspective, that is exactly what Simon and his team will audit against when checking spend.
Chris, can I stop you?
Of course, sorry.
This juncture. Obviously, the Appendix 1, as you say, a colleague was due to present that. And Appendix 1 has got some areas where the committee's had some concern in previously. So I think it would be unfair to open up questions for that section of the paper, because I know a lot of the elected members have got concerns with purchase order not being raised on time. There were retrospective raising, and some of the comments in this gives a different view. So rather than go through that paper, that section, I've just wondered whether it can come back at a future date when your colleague is available, because there are this is the ideal scenario.
Yes.
But we've seen reports coming through on many occasions, elected members closer to this as well through the schools, where there appears to be that level of not 100% compliance with what's been written in the paper. So rather than you go through that and be bombarded with a number of questions or comments from the committee, I'm just wondering whether you oblige me and we'll bring that one back.
Of course.
But if we can open up any questions we've got on the procurement part, which you've got familiarity with. And perhaps if I can open up with a statement before opening to members. You mentioned on a number of occasions, internal audit do this, internal audit do that. I think the committee need to recognise internal audit is an independent function and cannot be seen as part of a process. So the work that internal audit do is for an assurance work for the council as a whole, not for a process element of the management controls that should be in place at that point in time. So I just wanted to make that statement because you've mentioned it on a couple of occasions. And the second part I'd like to pick up is in section 10, you talk about, the level of requirements. And I'm just wondering what, if any, requirements are in there. Sarah may be able to help on this one, regarding the minimum requirements for the prevention of cyber attack, because it's well known that third-party procurements need to, demonstrate or to give evidence that they've got those minimum requirements legislative, and I've just not seen any mention of that. So I just wondered if you do ensure that there is that.
Shall I start off? And probably Sarah will know more than me. I'm certain of it. In fact, this did come up, and we did, between our service areas, if I recall correctly, work out a way of ensuring, as part of the supplier evaluation, that we were onboarding the correct suppliers. So there are certainly standards, and if you can recall what they are, Pastor Sarah, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. As part of the procurement process for any new suppliers, we are very specific in people need to give evidence of their cybersecurity arrangements, things like Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus, which is also now just come out recently as a national requirement as well for a lot of suppliers. So we definitely put that. We're also, obviously, we stipulate that for our existing suppliers as well, not just new ones. This will be something as well I'll be bringing back to the committee in December.
Yes, that's fine. I just didn't see it and I wanted to be sure that that was the case.
Thank you, Chair.
That's fine, yes. Right, if I can open up to questions then, and it's only on pages 28, 29 and 30. If there are any questions on that section of the papers, and we'll retain the other ones for a future meeting. Dave?
Thanks, Chair. In regard to paragraph 11, you mentioned obviously about procurement on an all Wales basis and then the UK basis. What triggers going from an all Wales basis to an UK basis? What's the process there in regard to suppliers? Thanks.
I think it's our initial evaluation of the opportunity. So, for example, I mean, I may be oversimplifying this, but for something like social care, that would be a very local sort of market in a sense to consider. Whereas if we were looking at technology, there may be UK level arrangements. There's something called Crown Commercial Service, who we may look to use and partner with them because there's a sort of economies of scale and a industry that works best at the UK level. So it's that case by case review and see what's appropriate. And a lot of his experience and history of what's worked and what hasn't worked as well.
Thank you.
Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this comprehensive report. If I can take you to paragraph 9 regarding the controls for procurement. Spend below 10,000 is awarded directly by the service areas. How do you pick up spend that goes over the 10,000 threshold that then requires a different level of approval, please? Is there any proactive work that procurement does, or are you relying solely on the work that the council's audit team performs?
We do a lot of proactive work in the sense of communicating the contract procedure rules and the obligations. They're very well embedded in the organisation and they're very well known. In terms of deeper analysis, that would depend on we as officers, we interlink with other parts of the council through multiple working groups. So we would be, again, if we just pick social care, we would probably interface with about 20 different working groups there. And if we looked at, say, domiciliary care, we would therefore be able to have lots of in-depth discussions and as part of that review spend profiles in those areas to ensure that there is conformance and understanding of contract procedure rules. So that's how we would interface with the other areas. I do not, on the flip side of that, go through sort of line by line of different service areas on a regular basis to check spend in perhaps the way you're suggesting. I don't do that on a on a sort of standard profile. The standard system is the service will come to us with a spend request, and then we will. Right now, I know I've got a meeting next week with one part of the council to look at its spend profile and to discuss how we can best improve it. Is there a way of aggregating contracts, amongst different teams in that service area? So through that approach, through that regular contact, is how we draw out and ensure compliance with the contract procedure rules.
So can you outline what the risks are for the council if spend does go over the £10,000 threshold, please, and isn't picked up by either yourselves or audit?
There are clear risks if we don't follow through on the processes I've discussed. One risk, for example, might be that a supplier is onboarded, is used, which doesn't have the correct insurances. And then, let's say, for example, that supplier does not perform its duty in that regard, and there is some sort of contract issue, and the correct contract is not in place or insurances are not in place, that would be a major risk. But what I would say to that point is, the council heads of service and senior staff are very familiar with these risks. These are not hidden risks. They're ingrained, in the operating environment in which we exist, and those risks would be known. We've had a number of sessions at leadership team, at senior management group. So these risks are communicated on a regular basis.
I think what my concern is that £10,000 is not necessarily material for a service like social services, so it might fall between the cracks.
Julie, can I come in there? Can I suggest that obviously within the procurement rules, you're expecting them the 10,000 limit must be recognised. If I can ask you to go away and look at what management can do to make sure you pick up anything that goes above the 10,000 and not expect internal audit to do that, because management should introduce a level of control that will pick that up, not wait on the internal audit team to come in to identify that. I think either work with the internal auditors for advice, or if you can look at that level of control coming in. I think that's what Julie's after.
Absolutely, I'll certainly
Yeah.
do that. It in fact links into the second paper
Yeah.
that we paused on.
Yeah.
At the bottom there, in the middle paragraph, an area for development is to look at how we would automate exactly that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we can take that away. If we can move on then, Jeff Jones, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Hi, Chris. I know you've done a lot of good work actually in this area since you've actually been here. But just a general point. I know we've come out of the EU now, and I think it's you've actually got in the paper UK Procurement Act 2023 brought in 2025. What sort of differences has it actually made, or has that created problems for you? You know, we're talking about suppliers. Are we more limited with regards to what we can do as opposed to when we were under the EU?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jones. I don't think it has limited us in any great way. Others may have a different opinion in the organisation. I think it's led to a lot of change, that new Procurement Act I mentioned, which in itself, I mean, I haven't gone into it in this paper. We are still working through that. There is a new operating environment. There are new technology systems in place. I mentioned elsewhere in the report, something called the Central Digital Platform. There is an interface now between the Wales system, known as Sell to Wales, primarily as the sort of brand name of the system, and the UK system. And we're still working through that, and it's not quite yet bedded in terms of those new IT systems they're actually at the Wales and UK level, which are supporting this. So that's been the major impact on my area of work. In terms of, I mean, it's an interesting point now I think about it, you know, maybe colleagues in service areas might point to things which have changed, for example, the availability of labour and how that impacted the different parts of the council. And I don't have a particular report on it as such, and an insight, but I think there has been, you know, with the change in the freedom of movement, but not just that. There's more implications in terms of the visas that are granted to workers. I know that has come up in conversations, and I think that's probably been the predominant feedback I've heard about the changes. Yeah, I think that probably covers it. If it's okay,
I just minded of the time now. So, Councillor Mike White.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Chris. I say, in Section 12 obviously is for the following the internal review. Now, clearly all our suppliers and would be on the council procurement list, wouldn't they? You know, we would have made sure that they applied, that they're on our recommended list. And also in regards then to awarding a contract for work to be done with the council, would the successful contractor be allowed? Would they be allowed that they would have to put down a bond so they can secure that contract?
Yeah, we certainly use bonds when appropriate, when there are certain liabilities with contracts. It's not mandatory. We don't use it all the time. It's part of the decision-making process that decides, you know, what is appropriate in that particular contract setting. It's one of a range of methodologies we might use. As I said, insurances is the other one. We wouldn't necessarily have the same insurances, both based on the size of contract or the focus of the contract in question. So we will look at what's appropriate to the thing that's being bought. and decide that. But certainly bonds are part of the what's possible there. And to the first part of your question in terms of the contract register, yes. So we would expect that any supplier that we are spending money with, as set out in this report, would be on that contract register, and that is a key benchmark of decision making in the system.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay. I think if you can bring this item to a close now, thank you very much for your attendance today, and we can pick up the second aspect of that report at a future meeting. Thank you very much. If we can move on then, Councillor Peter Black, I think the next item is your scrutiny annual report. Can I welcome you as chair of the scrutiny committee to our committee? Nice to see you again. And if you can take us through your report, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The committee's got the report in front of you. I just want to highlight a few things. Obviously, we're doing quite a lot of work trying to make sure the way the council works is presented. We're liaising with yourself, of course, to make sure that we don't overlap with our work. But a couple of things in the report, for example, this year, an in-depth inquiry on community assets was concluded, and we're currently coming to the end of an in-depth inquiry on grants as well. We've got 4 one-off working groups on agile working, public engagement, empty properties and tree services. And of course, we have ongoing performance monitoring carried out by the Education, Adult Services, Child and Family Services, Climate Change and Nature panels, along with the Service Improvement, Regeneration and Finance panels. So we do try to cover as much as we can of the council. Council attendance has been around about 71% at committee meetings, and we presented reports to Cabinet, of which a large number have been accepted. So we feel that we're making a difference, and we're having an impact in what we're doing, and hopefully together with the Governance and Audit Committee, making sure that the council and its officers are being held to account for all the work they do, and hopefully improving on what they do as well. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Councillor Black. I mean, this is a very comprehensive report. It just demonstrates the amount of work that is being done. As you know, I've attended a couple of your meetings, and I was very impressed with the questions and the responses you were having at those meetings, and the depth of the challenge and scrutiny that you apply at those meetings. So I gain a lot of assurance from the work you're doing, and I'm happy to see the results of all that work in this excellent report. I'm particularly pleased to see that on one of your improvements, you're looking at questions to be more challenging to get under the surface of performance data. It's something that we've discussed at many of the Governance and Audit Committee meetings around the performance framework and how do we understand better performance. So the fact that you've got it as an area you want to get more under the surface, it really is a pleasing step forward for this committee anyway, and gives me a lot of assurance. I'm quite excited to see what comes out of that. So thank you for that. I've got no comments other than that to make on this report, but I'm happy to open up. Councillor, I've got a hand up, I can't quite see it. Councillor Mike White.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, as I say, being Vice Chair of the committee as well, we obviously want to dig into as much as we can regarding scrutinising the services. That's why we have the annual works conference thing there. I would urge that we are trying to get more people involved, backbenchers involved within scrutiny work. So if we can try and get that target up to about 80% of membership take up, that would be a good way forward. But as I say, we did have some training back last year with the WLGA, and they were very impressive with what we have actually, we were working in Swansea. And in fact, we had colleagues from East Talbot down as well, because they were looking at they could look at improving their scrutiny within that local authority. And I know that, as I say, they did learn quite a lot from what was being done in Swansea. But we are trying to get members to come on board. So colleagues who are there from not only my group but other groups, you know, if you can encourage your colleagues to participate in scrutiny, it is very important.
Thank you, Councillor White.
Yeah.
Are there any other?
Just to say, Chair, that 68% of backbench members were involved in scrutiny during the period of that report. We do need to get more involved, but also when they come to meetings, ask questions and pitch in. It doesn't always happen. We are doing better at that, I think, now as well.
Thank you both. Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Peter, for an excellent annual report. Could I ask, I'll take you to the councillor satisfaction survey for two of my questions. Some of the survey records frustration over Cabinet not always accepting scrutiny recommendations. If you consider the recommendations to be sufficiently important, is there any alternative route that you can take to highlight these?
Well, we can complain about it. I mean, the way the council's set up with the cabinet system, unless it's a decision of full council, these matters are delegated to the cabinet. So obviously we will do an inquiry, we will make recommendations, we'll give the reasons for those recommendations, but at the end of the day it's down to the cabinet whether or not they accept them. I think on the last one we put, I think it was over 70% of the recommendations were accepted, and in my experience that's about elsewhere. I mean, I know when I was a member of the Senate, very similar situation there where the committees made recommendations to the Welsh Government, and they didn't accept all the recommendations, but they tended to accept the vast majority of them. So I think, you know, we just do our best and keep plugging away, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. And is there anything in train to improve access to information or research resources for scrutiny committee members, please?
Well, when I was in the Senate, we had the research service had a budget of over £1 million, so you can imagine we were very much spoiled. But so we don't currently have a researcher available in the scrutiny session. I'd like to have research available, but we haven't. In fact, just been fighting to retain the staff we've got there, given the council's financial position. We are starting to use AI more. So I know that one of the things that we've been doing is putting reports through AI and getting a list of questions from that, which we then getting councillors to ask. And the last couple of meetings where we've done that, we have got a much wider range of questions being asked, and also I think getting a bit more in depth of that. So we have been taking advantage of that facility and co-pilot facility to improve the questioning and to try to get under the skin a bit more. So in a sense, that's what a researcher would be doing anyway. So it has new technology to the rescue.
Okay, thank you. And a very small presentational point on page 45, the scorecard. Scorecard C, number 11. There's a downward arrow, which to me signifies a drop in performance. But there's been an improvement in cabinet member response days from 22 last year to 19. So I think possibly the arrow should be upward facing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Oh, Ness.
Yeah, just on that AI point, just to say we have a colleague who is training staff in the use of Copilot, and they have done a session with the scrutiny officers and showed them how to use functionality like researcher and also analyst, which really does help them to make the most of that technology in terms of the wider research that's available on various topics.
And saving the council the cost of a researcher in the process.
Is that something that the Governance and Audit Committee members need to look at?
Certainly, we can do a training session with Andy, our trainer, if the committee would.
I think that would be quite helpful.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Ness. Thank you, Peter. And if we can move on to the next agenda item, which is the annual complaints and compliments report.
Thank you, Chair.
Sarah.
Thank you. So this is the annual complaints and compliments report for 24-25. The scrutiny last year asked that some of the categories are changed so that they mirror what we submit to the Ombudsman. So what you see in the report this year is slightly different. It mirrors the quarterly reports, that the submissions, the statutory submissions that we send to the Ombudsman. In addition, you'll see that in doing that, housing figures also includes housing repairs, whereas previously they were separated, but where possible, I have shown those as separate figures. The Public Service Ombudsman for Wales figures, they're going to follow as a separate report because we're still in discussion about some of those numbers. You'll see in the report, though, there's no unusual systemic trends which cause concern. The type of complaints that we're seeing are in line with what the Ombudsman has seen across 24-25 across Wales. Just briefly to go through each of the appendices. So in terms of corporate complaints, there was a total of just over 2,000, so 2,090 stage 1 corporate complaints were recorded, which is an 18.5% increase from the previous year. The main areas of complaint were missed refuse collections, housing repairs and environmental health. Waste and refuse, they did see an increase in stage 1 complaints, but only a small proportion of those did actually escalate to stage 2. And the service areas implemented a management action plan to address performance on miscollections, which the committee may be aware of. The service also received 158 compliments, which does show that, albeit there was some complaints about miscollections, does show many residents still value the work that's done across the many thousands of collections done each year. 91.67% of stage 1 complaints were resolved within 10 working days, which is a 28% improvement from the previous year. This is a huge improvement due to the React system that we've put in, the new complaint system, because it's really improving compliance within the service areas. That's made a bigger impact. And stage 2 complaints increased by 15.5%, with 216 recorded. Only 10% of those escalated to stage 2, which is actually comparable to the previous year. The proportion of stage 2 complaints upheld or partially upheld did more than double to just under 30%. Housing, which includes housing repairs as well as roads and transport, also received a significant number of complaints, but you'll see there's no particular trends for concern in the information given, and also those services did receive a high volume of compliments as well. So in terms of compliments, they increased by just over 60%, 61.2%, with 503 received. Waste and refuse, roads and transport, and housing repairs received the most compliments. And then moving on to social services, you'll see that adult services saw a decrease in stage 1 complaints, so a 38.5% decrease in stage 1. Stage 2 complaints doubled, but they're still very small numbers comparatively. The increase in stage 2 complaints largely due to more complainants being dissatisfied with stage 1 outcomes. And as you know, the policy around social services is slightly different, so people can automatically request a stage 2 complaint to be investigated. They don't have to necessarily go through stage 1. The number of stage 1 complaints actually was the same as 21-22. In the graph, that spike in 2022-23 was actually due to more complaints just from one single complainant. Child and Family Services experienced a 35.8% increase in stage 1 complaints and just over 7% increase in stage 2 complaints. This rise is often in corporate complaints, so that would be about sort of administrative aspects which people are complaining about. This is more family members and foster carers using the corporate process, often challenging decisions regarding children during the year. So just a comment on the financial implications. So financial redress in adult services is the highest in 4 years at just under £27,000. This is listed out, you can see in Appendix B. The increase is mainly due to the complexity of cases and the higher volume of stage 2 complaints. Child and Family Services paid £3,774 in redress. The cost of external investigators, you'll see, is also increasing. mostly due to the complexity of complaints and also the increase in investigator costs is going up with inflation. More people, as I said, are requesting stage 2 complaints straight away, as is their right under the social services policy. There was no other additional financial or legal implications. The report, and just a final point on learning and improvement. So you'll see across the reports, we do use complaints and compliments to continually improve processes and services. Each service does have processes in place, and you'll particularly see examples of that around the targeted improvement plan that Waste and Refuse have put in place, but also the information around social services where they've got, they have a very integrated learning approach from complaints, using it for staff training and best practice guidance that they issue out as well. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
It's lovely. It's a really comprehensive report, and I'm pleased to see the learning and the evidence of learning, particularly picking up the hotspot areas like waste and refuse, and the assurance that there's action plans to make those improvements in learning. Any questions from members, please? David?
Thanks, Chair. Just sticking with the social services side of the report and paragraph 8 about financial implications. Looking through those bullet points, you can really highlight communication issues, both within the service or to external agents, whatever. I just wondered in regard to information and communications, how's that taken forward with that particular service area? Thank you.
Yeah, so each of the complaints then they have a sort of quality circle which they look at, and there's a team that particularly looking at quality around those aspects. So then they send out guidance to individual teams and officers saying this is what's happened with this complaint. If it happens again, can you make sure? I mean, often with social care, there's never one size fits all. All complaints are slightly different. It's very complicated. But absolutely, I think where, as you say, if there's a trend around communication, or if things can be done quicker, or if messages need to be sent out to certain organisations or agencies, then they do pick that up and they talk about that in their team meetings and then put it out in the newsletters and team briefings to the staff so that they make sure they pick that up.
And of course, this report is around 24-25. Is there any early sort of headlines around the current year, or is that a bit unfair to put you on the spot?
No, I'm going to aim to try and bring the report shortly, though, so you will see the half-year trends. But again, we're not seeing any unusual spikes compared to previous years at the moment.
Just one final point for me around paragraph 8.2 and the cost of external investigators. It'd just be handy to know a bit more about how you procure external investigators. How are they paid per case, or is there a standard fee? That sort of thing. I mean, that might be for a future meeting, but it'd just be handy to know the whole process around external investigators, and are they local? Are they all Wales wide? Whatever.
Happy to bring that back. Yeah, I think the it's a very niche area is social services complaints investigators. We talk as councils across all of Wales, and there are for some areas you have to have very niche skills as well for certain types of investigations. So it's a very small pool of people with very niche skills. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
But I'm
Thank
happy
you.
to bring that back. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Mike White.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, can I just say in relation to the obviously you've got comments regarding complaints there, but in regards to 9.42 around the areas of transport areas and the pothole street light in an area like that. Now, where we get a lot of problems, I think the department should really dig down into this, because I don't feel like sometimes that we deserve the criticism that and target away, because we do get issues where we've got utility companies come in, they do work on a public highway and they don't reinstate it properly, which ends up with the road getting breaking up and cause potholes. Then we've got to come back and we've got to remedy those areas. So I think we should dig down into that, because sometimes criticism's thrown at us, which isn't fair. And the same with street lighting issues, because we got a lot of the new developments in Swansea, which the developer haven't actually adopted asked the council to adopt those roads within that development, and subsequently we are then not responsible for lighting. And there have been issues across the city where lights have all gone out, and we've been asked to go and repair them. But of course, the developer bring in a management company who are responsible, and I think there again we get criticised for that. And in regards to the issue of parking and the PCN notices, I don't think sometimes people, when they make the complaint, give the exact concerns why they've had a PCN notice, because if you park in a residence-only parking bay and you haven't got a permit and the wardens are there, you will get a ticket. So I think there are issues there where people might have had a ticket because they are parked, they shouldn't be parked, and then they've made a formal complaint against the council. So I think, you know, we should dig down into that and see exactly if these are some of the issues around these complaints. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any response? Or?
Yes, and I could provide more information about how many of the complaints in those areas then were justified. Some of the examples that Councillor White's raising there, we would probably count as not a justified complaint if some of them had been raised where it actually was out of our jurisdiction, for example, and the Ombudsman would probably be in the same place. So I can provide more information on that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. It's comforting to note the actions that are in place to help remedy the complaints. But could we use this as a point forward for the committee to ask heads of service when they come to committee to concentrate or to include an aspect of their report, the work that they are doing to help minimise complaints happening in the future, such as whether they monitor service requests to prevent them becoming complaints in the future.
If I can come in there, I mean, Ness and I are due to meet regarding the heads of service coming into the Governance and Audit Committee once we've had the report from Audit Wales on risk management to see what the report needs to look like, the content, etc. And if you can leave that with me, Julie, and we'll discuss that when Ness and I meet to see what's appropriate to bring in. Is that all right, Julie?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Yeah. If there are no other questions on this report, can I thank you, Sarah, for the report? I'm pleased to see the complaints and the compliments. Nice to see the compliments going up as well. And I'm really assured that the learning of the lessons, which is the critical factor for me to drive those complaints down if we're learning sufficiently from those lessons. So thank you very much for attending today. Our next item on the agenda is agenda item 9. Ness, is this here?
It is, thank you, Chair. So this item is an update on the governance and assurance arrangements for Swansea strategic partnerships, looking at the financial year 24-25. It was originally presented to Cabinet on the 16th of October and is now shared with this committee for information and assurance. So the 5 partnerships that the report covers is the Public Services Board, Partneri Joint Committee, the South West Wales Corporate Joint Committee, Swansea Bay City Region Joint Committee, and the West Glamorgan Regional Partnership Board. So these are the sort of key partnerships that are central to how we deliver cross-cutting outcomes under the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act and the Social Services and Wellbeing Act. And they each involve complicated governance, funding, and scrutiny arrangements across multiple organisations. So the report, without going through it in detail, has some key themes, and they include governance maturity. So the report highlights the governance arrangements and moves that have been made during 24-25 to strengthen formal governance frameworks. Performance and assurance, reporting and scrutiny mechanisms across the partnerships continue to develop in 24-25. For example, the PSB, the Public Services Board, strengthened its quarterly performance reporting and its scrutiny feedback processes. Partneri maintained rigorous business planning and risk management during its transition to the new collaboration model, and the RPB, the West Glamorgan Regional Partnership Board, embedded more data-led assurance and pooled fund governance. In terms of financial oversight, all the partnerships sustained regular financial monitoring and independent assurance, including internal and external audits. And indeed, the City Deal Joint Committee in particular had a positive audit Wales assurance and risk assessment, confirming that governance and financial controls remained robust. Stakeholder and public engagement has been a consistent feature of the partnerships, from PSB public forums and regional showcase events to co-production initiatives under the RPB. So these developments continue to demonstrate transparency and involvement across our partnerships with service users and communities. Finally, in terms of risk management, each partnership operates a live risk register and mitigation framework, covering areas like funding, governance, delivery risks, and no new strategic risks were identified through the period. In terms of Swansea Council's role in particular, we play a leading role actually in a number of those in all 5 partnerships. So from providing administrative leadership and sharing responsibilities. So for example, Councillor Andrea Williams is chair of the Public Services Board, and the leader is chair of the City Region Joint Committee, and senior officers chair and lead various governance subgroups across the partnerships. We also embed assurance and scrutiny through formal mechanisms through, for example, this board's ongoing oversight, and ensure that the governance frameworks of the partnerships are aligned with our own corporate governance and assurance model, as we reflect that within our governance audit statement. So to conclude, the report provides corporate assurance that strategic partnerships remain well governed, transparent and compliant with statutory requirements, and that they are performing effectively in respect of oversight, scrutiny, financial assurance. Partnership working remains a key enabler of the Council's wellbeing objectives and our transformation priorities, and they are continuing through 25-26. Chair, that concludes my summary. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Naz. Before I open up for questions, if I can just note the fact that this report has gone to Cabinet just a few days ago. So the Cabinet themselves have had assurance that the partnership arrangements are working as they are and that they're robust. So I think it's a very comprehensive, it's a very informative report. I do have a couple of not questions, just comments really. But if I can open up, if anybody's got any comments first. There's no comments around the table. Julie?
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask what internal or external audit arrangements are in place for the PSB, please? Because it mentions scrutiny, but it doesn't mention any form of audit.
So there isn't anything on the audit programme for this year in terms of the council, but it may be that Audit Wales can, as it did with the Joint Committee, take the decision either to do a national report which covers PSBs across Wales, or to do a local report indeed on the PSB at some point, but there's nothing in the current programme for that.
Can I just come in on that one? I noted paragraph 7, the PSC governance framework was strengthened through a comprehensive review of partnership across the region. Who did that review? Paragraph 7. Governance framework was strengthened through a comprehensive review of partnership governance across the Swansea Bay region.
This is a piece of work that we did during 24-25 in the PSB, so it was an officer piece of work. So we had officers from the RPB and the PSB mapping out our governance arrangements of both partnerships to try and identify if there were areas of duplication or overlap, and to ensure that, for example, we were not duplicating our agendas, or making sure that where we had identified something, we were notifying the RPB and vice versa, to just streamline and improve the effectiveness of both partnerships. So it was conducted by officers.
Okay. I mean, it could be that there's audit arrangements in other local authority audit plans. So I remember at one point, it was the lead, I think Leith Port Talbot at one time was auditing the regional partnership. So it could be another answering Julie's.
Yes, so for the Public Services Board, obviously, because that's just Swansea,
Yeah.
that would be something that we would do.
Mm.
But if it's for one of the regional bodies, then yes, within individual organisations, they could choose to audit certain aspects.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? If I can just pick up one or two. On page 156, paragraph 34, something I've commented on before, and it's around the Governance and Audit Subcommittee continue to provide internal assurance. That's been very limited in its activity, as I've reported before, and I've also asked for it to be minuted. And there's reference to a November 24 workshop, which is held in lieu of a formal Governance and Audit Subcommittee. When I've queried this, I've been informed that there was little activity going through for the Governance and Audit Subcommittee to consider, hence the reason for the ongoing cancellation. Having said that, scrutiny has met regularly. So there's a level of assurance that is being obtained through the scrutiny work. But it's important to note that the Governance and Audit Subcommittee has not met sufficiently to give truly a level of assurance, something I've raised on a couple of occasions. So it's a point of noting more than anything. I don't think I've got. Yeah, Gareth.
Chair, just to confirm that the response given there around Audit Wales's powers in terms of performance audit around the PSB is correct. We can choose to audit the PSBs, and we undertook a national study of PSBs in 2019, and that report is available in the public domain. And again, it's our work programme is done on a risk assessment basis, so we may undertake external audit work in the future, Julie. It's not work that we wouldn't undertake. It's there as a possibility rather than a requirement of us. I hope that clarifies.
Yeah, and I don't expect an answer to this one, but if you can just take it away. It talks on page 163, paragraph 68, about the Regional Integration Fund expiring 27. I'm just wondering if there's any plans underway preempting what may or may not happen with that future funding. I don't expect a response to that, but if you can take that away. If there are no further questions on that paper, then can we move on to the agenda item 10? I think this is UNES again. The draft council response to the outcome of the 25 panel performance assessment.
Thank you, Chair. So this report presents the findings of the panel performance assessment, which was undertaken in June as part of the requirement of the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021. So in the pack you have the report that the panel produced. Under the Act, we are required to produce a response to the recommendations made by the PPA panel and to provide an action plan to show how we are responding to those recommendations. Under the legislation, we're also required to consult this committee on the content of that action plan before presenting the final action plan with the council for approval. So just to go through a bit of detail on the report itself. So the report is basically an assessment of how effectively the council is exercising its functions, using its resources and governing itself. The assessment was facilitated by the Welsh Local Government Association, the WLGA, and took place in June, as I say, over 4 days. The council proactively scoped the review, and we asked, in addition to those 3 general points of assessment, we asked the panel to also give us feedback on our digital transformation and data governance, on workforce development and sustainability, and programme delivery and internal collaboration. The key findings of the panel were extremely positive, and it concluded that Swansea Council is performing strongly across those 3 areas of governance, management of resources and delivery of our functions. It concluded that we are exercising our functions effectively, using our resources well, and that we have sound governance arrangements in place. In fact, no statutory recommendations were made on any of those areas. The panel described Swansea as a mature, ambitious and well-led authority, characterised by strong political and officer leadership, with mutual respect across party lines and a culture summed up by the phrase Team Swansea. They praised the inclusive and collaborative culture, strong scrutiny, and in particular highlighted the service transformation committees, effective governance arrangements, and also a clear commitment to improvement and partnership working. We were also recognised by the panel as being well respected by our residents and partners for our openness and engagement. There were areas for further development, and those are set out in the report. So there were 13 improvement recommendations, all of which we've accepted in full and are very much along the lines of areas of improvement that we were identifying for ourselves. So they focus on refinement, not correction, so helping us to go further on our improvement journey and to build on existing strengths. The main themes of the recommendations are around data and digital, prioritising high value digital projects, distinguishing transformation from business as usual, and delivering a unified data strategy and modern platform. In terms of workforce, the recommendations focus on strengthening career pathways, management practices and workforce planning, supported by partnerships with local universities and growing our own initiatives. On corporate capacity, the recommendations focus on reviewing and resourcing corporate support services to ensure that we can sustain transformation and delivery at scale across the council. And in terms of programme delivery, the recommendation relates to establishing a capital oversight board to strengthen oversight, prioritisation and delivery of our capital programme of our major capital projects. And finally, on vision and communication, the recommendation relates to ensuring that our council's transformation narrative and our vision, which are articulated, but recommending that they're more clearly communicated and embedded across the organisation. So in terms of our response, the Cabinet and Corporate Management team really welcomed the report and its recommendations, and our response to those recommendations is set out in Appendix B of the report in front of you. The committee is asked to note the panel's report and then to comment on the action plan in Appendix B. I would assume that everybody's had a look at that. So in conclusion, just to say that the panel's assessment confirms that the council is well led, collaborative and forward looking. It's operating with strong governance and performance frameworks, and it's ready to meet future challenges with confidence. The action plan provides a clear and proportionate response, if we feel, and that will help us to continue with our improvement journey. So, Chair, that's hopefully enough of an intro, and happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Naz. It is indeed a very positive report and an excellent outcome, really, to have that independent commentary given back to the council. So well done to everyone that's involved in the preparation of this review going ahead, which has clearly resulted in a very good outcome, by the way, the report. From a personal point of view, I think the action plan is very detailed, very comprehensive, and looks explicit enough to get it implemented. The only comment I'd make is around some of the dates extending to 2027. And I'm just wondering with the current resource on staff resource is whether some of these dates are achievable or whether they need to have another look. But that's the only comment I'd have as chair. Any comments from members, please? Nobody around the room. Julie?
Thank you. Several actions in the action plan are assigned to the head of HR and OD with varying target completion dates starting from the end of December up to 2027, as Paul has just mentioned. Given the upcoming Audit Wales review of recruitment and retention challenges, could you explain what governance arrangements will be around this in terms of programme or project insurance, and what resources are available to deliver these individual work streams, please?
Certainly, thank you. So in terms of governance of the recommendations set out here, the workforce recommendations will be overseen by the Workforce Transformation Board, which then reports up to a Corporate Transformation Board, which comprises Cabinet and Corporate Management team. The Cabinet member for Workforce sits on the Workforce Board as well. So there's a clear link right through to Cabinet on that. In terms of resources, we are currently going through the budget planning round for 26-27, and we are having discussions with Cabinet colleagues and corporate management team about the resources required to meet the recommendations set out in this report in respect of both workforce and digital. Although obviously the budget process takes a number of months and will conclude with a budget in March to council, so no decisions can be taken formally until then, certainly the case is being made and is being recognised through those discussions that there may be an additional need for resources in corporate services to meet these recommendations and to support the organisation with ongoing transformation.
Okay, thank you, Naz.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, just to come back on where we've got dates that relate to 2027, it's recognising that embedding some of these changes where they're potentially some of it cultural or competency, capability, capacity take time. And so we think a 2-year time frame for being able to say that they're embedded is realistic. So it's not to say that we're not doing anything until the second year. It's the fact that with an organisation of this size and scale, digital skills, workforce development takes time. So that's why the deadlines are
I appreciate
over that 2-year period.
Okay, thank you. And final question from me is, you've got a comprehensive action plan here. How is that going to be monitored by way of progress being made against it?
So the Cabinet and the corporate management team will do that, and we can also bring back reports however frequently Governance and Audit Committee would like them, with updates on how we're getting on with
6 monthly.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just in regard to the panel performance situation or arrangements, when do we expect them to return, and does this report form a baseline for that next visit? Thanks.
Thanks. So the requirement under the legislation is that we have a panel performance assessment once in every administrative term. So it's up to the council to decide at what point in that administrative term. So we could say we'll do it in 5 years' time, but it may be that we decide we want to do it more quickly than that or slightly later than that. That's at our discretion, as long as we do an assessment in every term. And absolutely, I would see this as the baseline. So we'd want to refer back to this when we do the next one, and see what progress we've made, and what our new challenges or next steps might be.
Thanks, Ness. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. Councillor Mike White.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ness. Yeah, in regards to the issue of the awareness with the council on recruitment in areas, are we committed to the bricks and mortar scheme that we have going on within the authority? And also, are we also committed to the apprenticeship schemes that we have within the authority?
So a couple of things on that. We're at the moment reviewing the recruitment and selection policy, and discussions are ongoing with colleagues across the council and trade unions to update and modernise our recruitment and selection policy. So that should, I believe, is going to the Joint Consultative Committee in January. And alongside that, we're looking at the other things that we can do to improve recruitment and selection. So looking at things, for example, the way in which we market vacancies, where we target the market for jobs, and then also looking at, as you say, increasing our apprenticeships, number of apprenticeships, looking potentially at wider trainee programs, and also looking at that partnership with universities to try and ensure that we are as effectively as possible growing our own over the next couple of years, because we know the demographics of the workforce are such that we're going to see quite a big exodus of people going off on retirement in the next sort of 3 to 5 years. And so it's really important that we get on the front foot with that as soon as possible.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Ness, for that report. It was very positive, and so it's a nice read, to be honest. So well done. If we can take the last item on the agenda for section A, and then we'll have a quick chat about section B, because I'm minded now the 2 hours that we normally use is just about hit. So Gareth, can you take us through your agenda item 11, the Audit Wales programme and timetable, please?
Certainly, Chair. Just to highlight to members that the report in front of you was correct as at the end of June, at the end of Q1. We were now going to publish these at the end of Q1 and Q3. So I just thought I'd just very quickly update members, just so you get assurance that the programme is moving forward, starting on page 206. The commissioning review has now been finalised, and we have received the management response form from the council, and that will be at the December meeting, both the report and the management response form. Moving on to page 207, both of the reports there are due to come to the 10th of December meeting as well. So that's the risk management and also cyber security reviews. And then turning to the 2025-26 programme, which is on page 208, we will be doing our evidence gathering around recruitment and retention, picking up on some of the themes in the previous item in early February 2026. Counter fraud, our work is well underway, and our evidence gathering is coming to a close on that. And we are in the scoping phase of our work on homelessness, which we will deliver in the spring of 2026. All of those timescales have been discussed and communicated with officers around that. So just to provide assurance to members of the committee that we are moving forward with our programme. On the local government national studies, the temporary accommodation report has been published. The capital planning in local government report, that will be coming out shortly for clearance and then publication. We are underway with our evidence gathering on the Children's Services project, which is looking at the implementation of the Health and Social Care Wales Act primarily. So that's looking at that one. And then the other reports are scoping currently. So I'll pause there, and I'm happy to take any questions that members of the committee may have.
Thank you, Gareth, and I appreciate the reports you referred to around Estin and CIW, etc. as well, because that gives us a total picture of the regulators' work across the piece. Any questions for Gareth on this report? Yeah.
Just picking up on the previous point I made in the previous agenda item around training and access to that training, maybe online, that you mentioned on I think it's page 216. in the future, you know, just, I know we discussed it before, but we're just reiterating that really at this point. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
We will take that away and ask our colleagues how we can facilitate that for members of the committee to be able to engage with those events in the future, Chair.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gareth. Thank you.
Okay. There are no other questions. Can I pause shortly, please? Obviously, we're at the point now where the reports on 12, 13, 14 are for information reports. I believe they've all gone to Cabinet recently. It's which way we want to deal with those now. They are for information, so whether you're happy to accept them for information or whether you want to bring them back to a future meeting for further discussion. So I'll open up to suggestions. Ness, can I ask if you've got any suggestions?
Chair, to be fair, I think because they are for information, we wouldn't bring them back to Part A. If colleagues have a particular question on any of them, we can answer the question and circulate that through Jeremy. But as a general rule, having separated out into Part A and Part B, Part A reports are for discussion, Part B are for information because they're not directly part of the remit of the committee. They're more to support the understanding of the committee in terms of providing assurance, but they're not specifically related to the terms of reference of the committee, if that makes sense.
And the subject areas of these reports have been through Cabinet. They've also been through scrutiny committees in those areas that they related to. So I'm happy to note them. But having said that, if there are any questions that any member has, if they could be directed through to Jeremy, and then we can get the responses on that. Leslie and Councillor Mike White. Leslie's gone, is she? Councillor Mike White, are you happy with that? Because Councillor Walton has left.
Yeah, as I say, you know, if they've already been through appropriate committees, you know, the information, but I think what it is, because they're all on the agenda, it makes the agenda that so much, you know, longer with all the information, you know, that people might not be on those committees that they want to read up on, you know.
Yeah. Well, as chair, I read every report, whether it's for information or not. So I've got a fuller understanding. So
yeah, I understand that, Chair. But some of us are on some of these on some committees which would have seen these reports, but other members on the committee perhaps haven't, you know. And this is the first opportunity that they've had. And as you said, if they want to sort of ask any questions or anything on the reports, you know.
Okay, so can I ask for a show of hands if we're happy to accept them? Sorry, Councillor Jeff Jones.
I'm just going to go before I see Julie put her hand up first. I was going to say that a lot of these reports actually go to full council as well.
Yeah.
So the only people really that perhaps haven't seen them are the independent members, if I can call them that.
Yeah. So can I get a show of hands if we're happy to accept them? Julie, have you got a question?
So it's a question more for yourself and Ness, whether we can see the performance monitoring report when individual heads of service or directors come to us, so that we can question them on the specifics included in it.
Can you leave that with me so I can discuss that with Ness amongst the other things that we need to look at? Because I don't want to overlap with the Performance and Finance Committee and the scrutiny panels, because there's an element of activity that goes on there, and it's what this committee need to receive to give us the level of assurance that that's happened. So if you can leave that with me,
Yeah, thank you.
So can I have a show of hands that we're happy to note the reports as they are? If any officers or members have got questions on any of the reports, we can feed them through Jeremy. Got a show of hands from those on screen in the room? Yeah. Okay then. Thank you for your patience with me today. It's been yeah. Is that okay? Is that okay, Jeremy? Okay then, so that brings the meeting to a close then. Can I thank everyone for their patience and their commitment and input today? And look forward to see you in the next meeting.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye-bye.
Bye.